All right, we are recording.
Okay, the time is 6 p.m. So call to order this work session of the Perry Township Board of Trustees.
Trustee Wynn?
Here.
Trustee Hartshorn?
Yes.
Trustee Mears?
Yes.
So the first topic on our work thing was for record retention. And we had discussed the new record retention policy. I looked into writing one and I've spoken to some folks about doing that. My hang up is I don't understand how we file it once the new policy is written
It's filed with the state.
with the historical group, right?
Yes, and I believe it's also filed with the state auditor as well.
Okay. Because that's something that Rhonda did. Charity gave me that information, but I have not moved forward on that because I wanted to make sure I was clear in what I was doing. Do you guys have any input on getting that completed? Because I think that's kind of a sooner rather than later thing.
Right. I had looked into that previously. Basically, it hadn't been updated in years, and the last time it was resubmitted, it was just the same as had been done before, from my understanding. So it hasn't been reviewed, and it hasn't been looked at as to what we need to be keeping, how long we need to be keeping it, etc. So I think it's due for review. That was one of the things that I was trying to work with Rhonda on, was reviewing it and also setting up the controls around it to ensure that we're, things that fall out of the schedule are destroyed when needed, because we don't have that side of it either. We have a document filed, but I think we've all seen the record storage room and know that there's a lot of stuff in there that's well outside of what was defined on that record retention plan. So that's definitely something that we'd have to look at, as well as when we're going to be, pick a date annually. It can be a week of a specific month annually, but have it on the calendar that every year we go through and we destroy the stuff that falls outside of the file retention. And if we're going to bring in an outside contractor to do that, we can also do a community shred day. So that's something else that we can look at doing. That way, at least we're providing some value to the residents while we're taking care of the township.
Have either of you had an opportunity to look at the Ohio Township Records Manual that gives a suggested records retention timeframe? It comes from that historical society in Columbus, but it's specific for Ohio townships. And I was looking at that, and there's an awful lot that we keep that we don't, and an awful lot that we potentially could keep that we don't need to, but we don't have any policy at all for like communications. We don't have, there's a lot of records of, certain publications and a lot of things that we've never even thought of.
Right. So yeah, I think we're definitely due for a review on that. That may be something that's a singular topic for a working session and or a summit, or whatever, the retreat, I think is what you called it. Because that is a lot of stuff to go through and figure out. So I'm all in favor of putting something on the calendar.
Okay. And there's a lot that doesn't even apply to us, like the ministerial parts. We don't have a minister.
Right.
So, there's stuff like that that we could just leave out of our own records retention policy. But I think when we write ours, it wouldn't hurt to just go through the guidelines for the townships and say, yep, this pertains, this doesn't, this pertains, this doesn't.
Yeah, it's meant to be a guide. It's not written in stone. So Yeah, we could go through that. And then on the backside of that, we'd also have to deal with the current state of the files and records that the township has. So
Yeah.
that would be the second part of that conversation is, after we go through and we figure out what we want, how we want to set up the file retention to best reflect local, state, federal law requirements, then how we will enforce it, right? And we'll have to go through things. We'll have to work with Charity. I don't even think Charity's been over to the record room yet. She's been a little busy on a few other things, little things. So that'll be another thing is taking her over there, getting her familiar with what's over there. A lot of the boxes are unmarked. We're honestly going to have to figure out how we can do that. It'll probably be, Charity and a trustee, and we can rotate the trustees through at different hours, different days, just to make sure that we're not treading on any open meeting issues. The other thing would be is that, I don't want to throw Karen completely under the bus, but if she wanted to help, I don't think anyone would say no to additional help. So that would be something to consider as well. I don't know what time of
We have
year
to
is
look into Karen's hours also and make sure that it allows for.
well, in one of the next topics, I think we're past the constraint on her hours, but we'll get to that. So I mean, that's when we consider the record retention plan, understand that there's planning, discussion, finalization, and execution, then sustainment. So we have to be able to go through all those stages. And that's where I was saying, I think it would take the better part of a healthy day to go through those. Because we've never even done an audit of what all we have over there in the retention room,
Yeah.
Or what's in the fiscal officer's office. We don't know.
Right.
So that would be another part of that, is going through that as well.
Okay. Are we in a position where we can schedule that now?
I would be comfortable with that.
Because I'd like to, like I said, I'd like to get this ball rolling
Mhm.
sooner rather than later. You guys tell me what works for you, and I'm good on weekend.
I would actually recommend like a Saturday.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to take anyone away from their other stuff. And I want to give it the attention that it requires. So that would be my recommendation, is a Saturday.
I'm free on the 22nd.
22nd's a Friday.
It is? No. Oh, yeah. No, May 22nd is a Saturday.
Is it? Oh, I've got my dates wrong. Okay. You're right.
We're available for that as well, Karen and I.
Okay. I can do the 22nd. I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
I can't do it the 22nd.
So,
Do we
and
want to
then,
look at,
and then the following weekend is Memorial Day weekend. So would punt there. About the 5th.
I'm free June 5th.
June 5th. I should be good. June 5th.
We're good. Karen and I are.
Start with coffee and donuts and work till we're done.
Would this
Sure.
be in person then to go over what, like Minnie said, the Ohio Township one, and then we just go through each one and say this is yes?
Yeah, we'll have discussions. We'll have to come up with
Okay,
like
a
a
work
scheduled
day.
agenda with breaks and everything else. Do we want to just do it at the township building?
We can at least
Probably
start
so.
there.
That's
And then if we
easier.
have to go, yeah, start there. And if we have to go to the records room, we'll do that.
And we're still constrained by how many people we can have in the building. So Zoom will be up and running. We will take breaks and pause the recording as we go. And we'll get it done. So.
What time do we want to start?
9?
10, 9? 9 is good.
9 works.
Okay. Okay. All-day work session set for the 5th to go over the records retention policy and so forth. Okay. Item number 2, Karen's return to regular hours.
So that is, Karen, you can jump in here regarding your hours constraints.
I'm perfectly fine with the way they are, the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, so the building is covered. But if that's something that can't be done, then, I can go back to the old hours, which is 11 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, Friday is 9 to 3. So whatever you guys decide, I'm okay.
My only concern with that is when we have meetings or anything like that, we'd have to flex hours.
And I've been doing that.
Right. I'd be more inclined to say, that the office is open Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday. And or shorter days. I don't know what it was. I don't even remember what it was before Karen. But Missy, do you remember the last?
Yeah, it was basically the same thing what Karen just said. That's what Kate's hours were.
Was 8 to
11,
5,
11 to 5. Yeah,
Mhm.
she never worked a full day. No.
right.
Yeah, 11 to 5 or 9 to 3. Yeah.
Kate was also just the zoning person, right?
Yes.
She wasn't the administrative.
No.
And Karen's kind of both.
So,
Yeah.
so I know that in talking with Karen, some flexibility on Fridays would probably be in order. It looks like right now we have about 30 hours a week is what she's covering. If we wanted to have that as 4 days a week at 7 to 8 hours a day. So the township would be open, let's say, 9 to
It's
5,
9 to 4.
9 to 4. I mean, yeah,
9 to 4 Monday through Thursday is not unreasonable.
no, and I think that would still leave room for meetings and whatnot. So, yeah,
Is that okay with you, Karen?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying for me to come in and work 9 to 4 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
yes,
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
And then if somebody needs to make an appointment for a Friday, I can avail myself, or we can flex that also. But with the BZA meetings and the road hours and the regular meetings. and
Yeah,
it-
I've been watching that, Mindy, because I definitely did not want to go over into where there would be any overtime whatsoever.
we
So
appreciate
I've
that.
definitely been watching that very closely. So yeah, I mean, it would be awesome to be able to work Monday through Thursday and have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because then I can, spend more time with the family.
Okay, well, then we will get the new hours posted on the webpage and the Facebook page.
yes, we will.
Hang it, make a new sign and hang it outside tomorrow.
We can discuss that in the regular meeting. We can bring that up.
Okay, just let me know when it takes effect.
Okay.
Okay. Will we need to vote on those hours?
In the regular meeting.
That would be under a new business then.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Fire levy? Did you guys get Sonia's email?
Yes.
I'm going to be the first to admit I'm completely confused. So I thought we already had decided that our levy is going on the ballot as a renewal. Is that not what happened?
So,
I,
go ahead.
well, I didn't think that we really, I mean, I know that we talked about it. I don't know if we came up with a renewal addition, what it was or the amount or anything.
So Harry Hartlob had sent a workbook that had the different levy values and whatnot in it that we were going to review. I think we discussed that earlier this month or last month, and we were going to table it. Now that we've got Charity on board, wanted to kind of re-synergize that, and then Sonia beat me to the punch when she sent that email. So I think what their point was, and the email's not coming up for me for some reason. Let's see if I can get this to work.
The way I understand it from reading the email, they would like a levy to pay for things that they purchased years ago. My email's not coming up either. Jason, are we all having a problem?
I'm not sure.
I'm getting the first line. It says, "Dear trustees," and I can't see anything else.
Yeah, that's what mine's saying too.
That's
Okay,
what mine was
All-
last night.
all my emails are doing that. Okay, IT dude, that's your department. Yep, I can't get any of my emails, Jason.
Well, my understanding was that Miss Keaton met with Clay Township also, and I know that Clay, I think, has put it on twice now, and both times it has failed. So I think that they were going with a different wording, thinking maybe that would help. So
Well,
I-
oh,
I
go ahead.
I don't know if this is to pay for things that's already purchased or things that are going to have to be purchased, or that money will be there if they purchase in the future. I don't know.
Well, that was what was in my question to her. In my response, I asked for a breakdown of the costs of the different things because, you know, I know they need new PPE and fire gear every few years, but when was the last time they got it? And is that something that they need versus want? And the new cots and the infrared camera and things like that, are those things that we absolutely need to hit up our taxpayers for? Or is that something that we're just being asked, you know, hey, we got these, it costs this much, we'll use it in your township as well, can you contribute? And with everything that's been going on and the finances the way they've been in the past, we were already hard pressed to do the renewal levy for the operating budget. So are these now two levies that they're asking for because of the 3% increase every year? Or is this instead of?
I don't think it's an additional. I don't think she's asking for an additional. It's just different language, if I'm understanding her correctly.
Okay, then what happened to that 3% step up
Well, that's-
increase in costs?
You still have, we are still responsible for that if it doesn't pass. If it doesn't pass, we'll have to pay either both Brookville and New Lebanon that cost.
Okay, but that's if it doesn't pass.
If it
So
doesn't,
we still have to have a levy.
yes, you still have to have a levy.
So-
You
So
have
we
to.
already have a fire levy. And now we're being asked to do a second fire levy for equipment.
Right, because everything has went up, so they're asking for a 3% increase.
Right, that was the first one. And now that was for operating budget. And now they're asking for a levy to pay for equipment.
No, I think it's the language. They're just changing the language. It's not an additional, they're not asking for us to run two levies. They're just asking for additional, instead of calling it a fire levy, it's a capital fire equipment levy. I don't know, because I can't get my email up to see the,
Okay.
Yeah, I can't either.
So I was able to get in through the webmail. So It says attached is a memorandum from me on a proposed levy for Perry Township. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend the meeting tomorrow as I have a park board meeting. So I think they basically what they did was they just gave us an example of the language for the shaping of the levy and the language to use. The change, and I'm not sure if this is actually where we were before, was that they're asking for it regarding capital equipment, which is different.
Operating expenses, right? that
Right.
is different.
Right.
That's why I think it's two different levies that are being asked for.
So the question here for Sonia is, would this be in lieu of our current levy? So we wouldn't need to do anything with the current levy. Just the additional cost they're asking for, the 3%, would be rolled into the capital equipment levy and then deal with that separately. Is
We
what
need
it
to
is what it
clarify.
sounds like. And let's see. And then what Harry had sent us basically, I think, covered what was in what would a 1 mil, 2 mil, and 3 mil levy would generate. And I do have that.
Yeah, and I think we talked about not going that high. It was like asking for.
We were talking, yeah, we had talked about like a 2.5 replacement.
Right.
And the question we have to ask them is this, is based on the current property values, you know, a replacement levy is more appealing. We
Mhm.
could probably even go lower with a replacement than we would have to by renewing it. Renewing it would add an additional burden, I think, at the higher property costs. So finding out how this actually needs to come out and what they're actually asking for here.
Right.
And I
is-
think we had discussed all of that prior to the tax reassessment, the property value.
We
change.
did, but the part that changes it is that we need to talk with them and find out if our current fire levy stays as is, and we
Yes.
just do a capital equipment levy. Let's say that's, I don't know, what a 1 mil levy, right, to cover the capital cost of 3% increase per year, and put that over here. Would that be sufficient? So
I
we,
don't think that this levy, this request covers that additional 3% and eventually 9%. And
Well-
3% on this year is 3% and then 3% subsequently.
and I understand that we can't really come to that conclusion unless they're on the phone or on the line. But let me just explain my logic here. The 3% increase was based on them having to renew equipment, certifications, vehicles, stuff like that that escalates in cost annually, right?
Mhm.
So if you think of it that way, that is the definition of what they put in as the capital equipment. So here, I'll bring this up.
But operating expenses is also electricity and payroll and things like that. They're two different budgets.
Right. So this
which
would-
one-
So that's what I'm saying, is that we talked about part of what they've defined here, and I'll bring this up. Hold on one second.
Was I asked Sonia, I sent her an email back and said, would this be in lieu of, in place of, or along with? And her answer, she didn't really answer that question. The answer was, I didn't realize you guys had made a decision on another one. I said, well, but
Right,
so I
So-
still didn't get an answer to my question.
right. So that's where we have to have a discussion with them. We basically have to figure out, we were on board with doing a new levy to meet the requirement for the 3% increase per year over what do we look at? 3 to 5 years. And then we tabled it because the property value assessments weren't done.
Right.
So we had all that shaped. We were just waiting to figure out what the millage would be for that replacement levy. If they're now saying that there's a new requirement, then we need to talk that out and find out, does that reduce the amount of millage that we would have? Like, let's say a replacement levy would be at 2 mil, right? So a 2 mil replacement levy, and then a 1 mil or a 0.5 mil capital equipment levy, which would split those out because they would run over different terms and they would cover different needs. But we have to find out how splitting what they have here in this template out, what does that do with the amount that we talked about last year regarding the amount that was necessary for the levy?
Well, here's what I'm seeing in this is last year, they approached us and said, you guys have to pay for our fire service. We have to raise the cost to provide you that fire service. We didn't have that in our budget, so we decided that we're going to have to put another levy on so we can afford to pay for fire and EMS services in Perry Township. And the two townships, or the two cities of Brookville and New Lebanon, came together and both said, yes, we need to raise the cost of what you pay us to have our ambulances and fire trucks come help your people. Now we have a letter in front of us that says a few capital equipment items that we have purchased over the years include. So now are they asking us to contribute financially for things that they've already purchased, that they've already had? And yes, they will benefit our township, but besides having to contribute to the cost of the fire gear, the SCBA, the power cots, thermal imaging, we still have to pay a bill for them to come into our township and help our people.
So here's the way that I'm understanding this. The current levy comes in and they take 25% off the top and they put it in the capital equipment fund, period. That's how they're doing it today. Between Clay and Perry, 25% of what they receive goes in this other fund. So if they're asking for, they're basically saying we have another option at our disposal. The question is how does that actually work? How much would we need? Is the current fire levy sufficient? And just do a capital equipment levy, which would be lower, to cover what they need? Or would we do a replacement levy like we had talked about? I think and like I said, I think it was at 2.5% is where we're currently at. A 2.5 millage. I always say percent. I don't mean that. 2.5 millage. And then they would just continue to pull the 25% off the top for the capital equipment. That's the part they didn't know, that we've already talked to Harry at the county auditor, right? And got that spreadsheet so that we can actually see that. So basically what she said is after you get with Harry, then we can talk. Well, we already got with Harry. We could talk now, right? So.
But we still have to pay a 3% increase. And then next year, 3% on top of that increase, and the following year, 3% on top of the subsequent increase.
But part of what's in here, the 3% was to cover a number of things, including the sustainment of equipment that they currently have, as well as pay increases and stuff like that. So if we're literally taking those two things and being told that we can split them apart, okay, but how does that look split apart? What does that mean from a levy breakout that they would need? Because like I said, maybe it's just a flat 2%. We do a replacement levy at 2% based on the current property values, and then we do like between a half and a 1 mil capital equipment levy for that stuff. It may be able to be done at a 0.5 mil, and if that's the case, then you can split those out. The reason they would be split would be so that they would be on different terms, right? Last for different amounts. But that's something we'd have to work through with them in the conversation.
Or we don't do anything and do it the original way, what we talked about. We do it just an additional, the 0.25 millage. And then that will give them what they ask us for originally to cover the 3%.
Right. And then they pull the 25% off the top like they did previously, because it's going to be an increase based on the property values. So that's what I'm saying, is that what Sonia sent us is they were giving us another option in case we weren't at the precipice of a replacement levy.
Right. And I think that's the way I'm understanding. Instead of calling or asking for that, we'll take
Right.
what you have now, and then you can call this levy, this capital,
Improvement.
equipment. Yes. So I think that's what she's doing. So, I don't think that I would not be in favor of 2 additionals. I mean, putting this on and then that, no.
Yeah, 'cause I have enough concern over one levy. It is an evil necessity. There's no question we need the levy, because we do have to be able to provide fire and EMS services for our township. But we also are still reeling from, last year we said, well, we're reeling from a tornado, and then all of a sudden COVID. And there are a lot of people that are still financially pulling teeth over COVID. And so, we need to make sure that we're not damaging either our citizens or our budget.
Well, and understand that legally the township has to provide this service. And we are kind of at a fork in the road, because if not Brookville, who?
Yep.
Well, we
Right.
have to do it. There's no question we have to do it.
Right.
But
So,
we need to do it as painlessly as possible.
right. And that's why a replacement levy could probably, even like we said, a replacement levy could come down based on the current property values, because across the county, property values went up by over 40%.
And
So
do it
you actually reduce the millage based on the property values. And that's where we would have to sit down with Miss Keaton and I can never remember the manager's
Madden.
name. Miss Madden. Yes.
Yeah.
And just work through the numbers, because at that point it's a mathematical exercise, right?
Right.
So
And I
I
kind of thought that's where we already were. I
right,
thought
but
that's what we were doing before we got the letter from Sonia.
right. And that's why last month I wanted to start energizing these talks again. And then we had to wait until we had Charity in place to be able to do that. I've sent everything Harry sent me to Charity for her review. And I don't know where she is with that. I know that she's doing a lot of stuff right now. But I think we're at the point where we could probably schedule something for the next couple of weeks to sit down with New Lebanon and Brookville fire departments and city managers to work out the math on this. I appreciate Ms. Keaton sending us this option, but it may not be necessary. So we just have to work through that with them based on the current property values and the information that Mr. Hartlop sent.
So we're leaving this at a wait until,
I would say that we need to reach out to New Lebanon and Brookville and ask their availability over the next couple of weeks to sit down and have a discussion over the math, and figure it out. Tell them we already have the breakouts from Mr. Hartlub, and we're ready to start figuring this thing out.
I can reach out and then I can reach out and ask them what dates are available, and we'll do it on Zoom. Is that okay?
Yep.
that would be great.
Yeah, I'll reach out and do that, and then I'll get with Karen and she'll give you guys their dates.
Sounds good.
Okay, the next one says police levy. What police levy?
So I brought this up, and this is not something that has been really talked about previously. And I know just the sound of it is going to make people cringe, but let me explain. So this year was the first year that Trustee Wynn and I were actually part of the budgeting for Perry Township. That happened before we were trustees the year before we started on January 1st. Appropriations were done. We basically just came into it and said, okay, if it's appropriated, then we're just going to run with that. This year's exercise of going through the budget, we saw how Chief Littleton, Sergeant Hessler, the police department is pinched severely. When the last police levy was done, it didn't take into consideration, as far as I can tell, talking to some past trustees and looking at the numbers, they looked for what it would take to have a 24/7 police force. They didn't necessarily look for what the police budget needs to be, both operationally as well as the non-operational overhead. And what I mean by that is there's certain funds that come out of the police budget that they have no purview over. One of those is their contribution to the monthly trustee salaries. We all file a percentage against the police budget. We have to. It's just the way that it has to be done because our general fund cannot sustain the salary of 3 trustees, period. So when the numbers were crunched for the police levy last time, they worked to figure out what it would take for a 24/7 police force. Now we have a 24/7 police force, and the non-operational overhead coming out of that budget is draining that fund. So looking at what it actually takes to both operate that police force and contribute to the non-operational overhead for the township that they're required to do, those numbers have to be gone through, and we need to figure out what's in the best interest of the township. I will tell you, next year's police budget is in serious trouble. I don't like talking about one levy, let alone more than one. But I will say that just going through the budgeting exercise this year, if this isn't done, there's going to be probably some serious cuts have to be looked at from the police perspective. Another thing that was brought up, and this is just discussion, this is no decisions have been made, no ink has been signed, but we have talked about, just from a very high level, of a new building for the township. This is not something that we jump at just out of want. This is now a certified need. The township building is old. It requires a lot of sustainment and maintenance, and it cannot currently house our police force. Our police force is now at the point where it fully covers our township, and we have police basically all hunched over in a closet, basically. I'm just trying to paint a picture here. They're not literally in a closet, but it's a very small space for the amount of people that we have on the police force, especially with the amount of required storage for police equipment, evidence, retention if they have to retain somebody. There's just a lot of stuff that is not part of the current building setup. So in the work I did earlier this year, late last year, regarding looking at a USDA loan to get a new building. Chief Littleton had talked about there may be some things he could shuffle around in his budget, but that's before his budget was almost bone dry, right? So that option withered. What we have to look at is this. Over the next 5 years, 10 years, what is it going to cost to try to operate out of the current building, sustain it, replace stuff as it fails? We just had a furnace fail. We've had water heaters fail. We've had electrical problems from time to time. The building's old, and we've done a lot with it over the years. I'm in awe of how that building has been so resolute in its existence for the township and being able to change from purpose to purpose. But we are looking at needing more from a township building. And that includes the ability to work. I think Sergeant Hessler was working with a CAD program to kind of lay out a floor plan, just a simple floor plan of what would be required. It's good. It gives a lot of insight into the amount of space the police department doesn't need, they don't want, they need. They have no space to interrogate witnesses. They have no space to retain. They have no armory. They have no secure evidence storage. These are all problems that come with having a full-time police force. And it's something that if we're going to look at what does the Perry Township Police Department require over the next 5 years to 10 years to operate, I think it's a worthy part of the conversation to look at what it would take to get a USDA loan to build a new building adjacent to the current one. There's been talk about what we could do with the old building. The problem is the old building stays up. It still kind of requires money, right? You can't turn the electricity off. You can't let pipes burst. You can't, there's a lot of stuff you can't do. So like I said, this is early discussions on this, but there's a very real issue with the police budget today that will be realized probably around the end of the year. And we want to be proactive. We don't want to, we don't want to have to do a new police levy every 2 to 3 years. That's not rational. Okay. That's going to be more problems than it's worth. We also want to plan more long-term for the township. If you plan properly and work towards that plan, you won't need to come and ask for money as often. You just have to take a more realistic point of view as to what it takes to operate a police force and the township for that matter. So with that, that's my response to your police levy question mark.
Yeah. Well,
So we
one
can
of
discuss.
the other things that I think is a big consideration is we do, as you said, finally have 24/7 police coverage.
Mhm.
We have cars patrolling and available to patrol all the time, but we have to be able to afford the fuel to go into those cars for them to patrol, and gas prices are about to get exorbitant. We
Not just that,
also-
I don't think anyone has a true appreciation of how much we spend on gas for the police in a given month today.
Right.
At $2.71 a gallon, we're paying thousands of dollars, rightfully so, because those vehicles have to be ready to go. They can't have a quarter tank of gas. So at the end of a shift, they're filled.
Right.
Whenever they get under a certain point, they're filled. That's by policy as well as logic, right? So we do spend a month. I mean, we all sign for it every month, right? So we see the checks that are going out and everything else, but I don't think the residents are aware of, if we actually went through the lines of the police budget that we reviewed this year when we had that meeting, and we actually showed what it takes to operate the police force and show what Chief Littleton had to whittle down to fit under the bar versus what he needs to operate the right way. I think that would say a lot for the residents to understand that, look, this is what is required. Now we have to figure out how to make it fit, and asking for money twice in a year, I know that's not optimal, but the bottom line is this. Both the township from the fire services perspective, the police perspective, I've even brought up, the cemeteries at different points, because our cemeteries aren't necessarily self-sustaining. They have a finite amount of revenue they can generate. Once you've sold all the lots on the cemetery, guess what? There's no more money coming in. So there's a lot of stuff in regards to the financial operations of the township that need to be reviewed carefully, thoughtfully, and discussed, because we're starting to see a few issues here over the last year and a half of stuff that has to be addressed. The police fund definitely has to be addressed. The fire fund, the fire levy has to be addressed. Those two things are guaranteed. Now, the question is that if we're going to go to the well, do we want to include something that's also required to be able to ensure that the township is covered moving forward? Or do we snap the chalk line and say that, it's part of a 5-year plan? Because, if you sit down and I don't know, I don't see, Chief, are you on? Give him a second to see if he's
I
on.
don't see his number.
He may not be on.
Yeah, I don't see his
So
number.
that's one of the things I'd like to do is probably talk with Chief in an open meeting and have him just kind of lay out, from his point of view, what happened during the budgeting exercise this year, where they are operationally, what their needs are from a space and storage perspective. And we talk about it. I mean, honestly, at this point, I just wanted to start the conversation because, like I said, talking about 2 possible levies is a lot, but it's not coming out of nowhere, and it's not coming because we just want to put levies on the ballot. This is because there is more than a certifiable need in both areas that need to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Are these questions we can ask him this evening when he gives his report and such?
I'd like to, I think we should give him some time to prepare. I don't want to put him on the spot.
Okay.
I haven't talked to him about this. I put this on here because I knew we were going to talk about the fire levy, and I didn't want to then come back in a month and say, oh, now let's talk about a police levy while we're working out. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to at least start the conversation. And we can always tee that up for the work session at the end of the month.
Okay. Yeah, also there was some conversation about the cost of dispatch, the cost of radios. And so I think those are things also that would be worthy of checking with Chief and finding out just how much that is getting out of them also. They're the necessary evils. They have to pay other people and we have to pay them.
Right. And I want to be clear that there was no malfeasance when it came to the last police levy. None. Okay. It was just, I don't think that was part of how they calculated it regarding like the trustee salaries coming out. That's a sizable chunk, even if, we try to take under 20% per month of our time and our pay from the police budget. That's still something that he wasn't planning for. And something up to this point, I don't even think he had much visibility in, because I asked him if he knew how much we were charging against his budget annually or monthly. And he was never getting any of that. So when we submitted our percentages, nothing was ever sent to him so that he could track that along with his other line items. And that's something that I had teed up to change so that when we sent our percentages in, because I understand that the percentage was something new in 2020, right, Missy? So, nothing wrong with doing it that way, but we need to make sure that the people that our salaries were coming out of their budgets, that they have a level of awareness. And it's not a big hole in the bottom of their bucket that they have no idea is there until their bucket's empty. So definitely something we need to include in the conversation.
Well, that covers our topics for the work session. Anything else you guys?
Nope.
Okay. So at this point, I'll make a motion to adjourn our work session.
I'll second.
Not fast enough, Missy.
I know.
Trustee Hartshorn,
Yes.
trustee Wynn,
Yes.
trustee Mears.
Okay, so we'll take a 10-minute break and see you guys back here at 7.